we're going to be spending an obscene amount of money in here. So we're going to need a lot more help sucking up to us, because that's what we really like. You understand me?
Sir, if I may say so, you're in the right store and the right city, for that matter. Anything you see here we can do, by the way. Get ready to have some fun, okay? Mary Pat, Mary Kate, Mary Frances, Tova, let's see it. Come on, bring it out.
Absolutely divine.
Great, but excuse me, sir. Yeah. Exactly how obscene an amount of money were you talking about? Just profane or really offensive?
Really offensive.
I like
Richard Gere is a Hollywood actor who was taken to the top of the Hollywood machine, but who had a heart and had an intellect that set him, in a way, slightly at odds with it.
Your Honor, this is outrageous.
It's outrageous, I know, outrageous. Even suggested the prosecutor would make a thieves' bargain with a notorious Velma Kelly and then fabricate the very evidence and set her free.
Your Honor,
just so
Velma
we can
Kelly's
win
not
another
on trial
case
here.
and move one step closer to the
Governor's
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 Why,
Master
it's
Jury
simply
Attorney.
beyond all imagine.
I'll hold you in contempt.
I agree, Your Honor. It is enough. The defense rests.
One of their great sex symbols, who kind of, you know, embodied the idea of the handsome movie star, but with a kind of cool, elusive quality to him. That's one Richard Gere. But I think there's a whole other Richard Gere who played dark, desperate, interesting characters.
I think I'm in a frame.
Who's putting you in?
I don't know. All I see is a frame. It's that Ryman murder out in Palm Springs.
Tricked with them?
Once. Just once. Fatally young.
Two-timing bastard.
So, I'm a nice guy. I can't help it.
Richard Gere is one of the most beautiful people in Hollywood, and he's been in some of the most pretty beautiful films, too.
You didn't do nothing to me. I didn't know what I had with you. I think about it. The things I said to you. How I pushed you into this.
He's not only a sort of glamorous super stud in many ways, but actually he's sort of also questioning that role. And I think that's what sets him apart, and that's what makes him very, very interesting.
What the hell's wrong with you?
Paper said Pat Garrett tracked me down. Stopped me dead. The outlaws always die. Only a fool would believe what they read in the papers.
He is a very interesting combination of a European and an American movie star. The only one who can do this, and that's Richard Gere.
Richard Gere was born in Philadelphia, Pennsylvania in 1949 and grew up mostly in Syracuse, New York.
His father was Homer George Gere. He was an insurance salesman. The name Gere apparently came in on the Mayflower boat. They could trace it back that far. It was changed from G-W-R to G-E-R-E. His mother was Doris Ann Tiffany Gere. She was a homemaker. And he went to the North Syracuse Central High School,
which is where he did a lot of athletics and music. He was clearly athletically built, but he also had a good ear for music. Not just playing instruments, but also singing. So he developed these twin elements to him, sort of at the same time.
He went to the University of Massachusetts Amherst on a gymnastics scholarship, where he majored in philosophy, but he also did a bit of acting. And that tells you a little bit about the Richard Gere mindset, that he was kind of a philosopher right from the very beginning. The roles he chose and the way he presented himself as a celebrity was as a thinker, and someone who sort of, I think at times, was slightly a conflict with the whole idea of his own celebrity and acting. You know, he's an interesting actor in respect to, he's quite intellectual.
He was there for 2 years and then dropped out. And he went to study at the Stock Theatre Company in Provincetown, Massachusetts, and never really went back. He spent some time working in bands and acting, moving around as far west as Seattle, back to New York. He even came to London, where he played Danny Zuko in Grease, and he was building up a good reputation as a Broadway actor. He was always pushing it at the theatrical point.
Gere managed to work his way into film in the mid-1970s, with supporting roles in Report to the Commissioner and Baby Blue Marine. But his big break came when he was cast in Looking for Mr. Goodbar.
Yeah, seen the movie.
Looking for Mr. Goodbar, Richard Brooks' film. Diane Keaton is the star, based on a massive bestseller by Judith Rosner about a lot about what the Times was about, the 1970s. And this is a woman who goes and picks up guys at bars and brings them back to her apartment, which was a huge thing to expose in those days. And Richard Gere plays one of the guys she picks up. He also dances in it, in the disco and also in her little tiny apartment. And it is an example of his great charisma as well. And it was a very important film in the day and got him noticed.
Looking for Mr. Goodbar would be a commercial success and picked up a pair of Oscar nominations. With Gere's star now on the rise, he appeared in the coming-of-age film Blood Brothers and the Terrence Malick drama Days of Heaven.
Got nobody to blame but myself. Well, I gotta get going before it gets too late.
Days of Heaven is a Terrence Malick film with Richard Gere and Brooke Adams, and they play a couple who, they're on the run, effectively, and they decide to pretend to be brother and sister. And they fool an old farmer into taking them in. And the old farmer appears to be very, very ill. So Richard Gere says to Brooke Adams, hey, why don't you strike up a thing with him? Maybe you'll get written into the will and we'll be, home dry, effectively. But then the farmer doesn't die, he gets better, and then Brooke Adams starts to fall in love with the farmer, and so Richard Gere has to deal with this whole situation sort of spiraling out of control. And it's lovely to watch the different tones and moods that he's playing, from, crook to lovable brother through to, frustrated loser, and he's able to jump very neatly between these two while keeping character. So it's even though it doesn't look like a virtuoso part, it sort of is.
In 1979, Gere worked with director John Schlesinger on Yanks, before teaming up with Paul Schrader for 1980's American Gigolo.
I made you, Julie. I taught you everything you know. How to dress, how to behave, how to treat women, how to make love. And then one day you come to me and say, I'm too good for you. And caught me out. It ain't right, Julie.
Things are different. I'm more than what I used to be. I'm getting older, man. I gotta keep moving forward. Just move.
Please, Julie, say me the speeches.
Paul Schrader's American Gigolo was the film which really made him a star, I think. He plays the gigolo himself with Lauren Hutton. He had a kind of feeling in his part, which you're not quite sure whether he's the villain or the hero of the film. And it was quite a subtle performance, really, of someone who could have been awful, but somehow wasn't as awful as he seemed.
And it was probably one of the most impressive and perfect pieces of casting of the decade. American Gigolo, which is a film that has an incredibly glossy surface and has a sort of dark swamp of emotions underneath it, is one of the key films of the decade. unquestionably. And one of the reasons that it works so beautifully is Gere's performance in it. He's so locked into this lifestyle of materialism and narcissism that he can't actually think his way out of this. He doesn't know what's happening to him. And yet, as the cracks show and as the pressure mounts, you see the vulnerability underneath. You see the vulnerable man underneath the shell that he has sort of developed. It's an extraordinary performance in an absolutely extraordinary film.
The love I saw in you was just a mirage. We used to meet in romantic places, but you gave the illusion that your love was real. Now it's left our lipstick traces from the kisses you only pretended to feel. And now our meetings you avoid.
In 1982, Richard Gere starred opposite Deborah Winger in An Officer and a Gentleman.
So, do you think you'll make it all the way to getting your wings?
Who knows? Guys a lot smarter than me, they're dropping out like flies.
The film that made Richard Gere, as we know him, is An Officer and a Gentleman. And it's a story of Zach Mayo, who joins up the Navy training scheme to become a naval officer. And in some ways, it's just, your standard American military Navy training movie. They're kind of a subgenre. We got a lot of them. The difference here was, at the same time he signs up and dedicates his life to kind of toughening it up and getting through this terrible course run by Lou Gossett Jr., he falls in love with Deborah Winger. The key, I think, to what makes An Officer and Gentleman more than just a standard Hollywood romance is the difference between the characters and the nature of the characters. Is that Richard Gere is a striving, guy who wants to be this kind of officer, who wants to kind of better himself. Yeah, the woman he's fallen for is a factory worker, and she has this kind of humble life. And it makes the contrast very clear. Will the love survive the direction each of their lives are going in? And that's kind of all then built up in what in some ways was the film that defined a formula for these things. The coming together, the gradual romance, the forces that pull them apart, then the final crescendo as they come back together again.
Following An Officer and a Gentleman, Gere starred alongside Michael Caine in Beyond the Limit, before appearing in Breathless, a remake of the 1960 Jean-Luc Godard film A Bout de Souffle.
All right. I know I'm crazy. I can't help it. I guess I love you.
Love? We spent 1 or 2 nights together in Las Vegas, that's all.
4. Come on, let's go to Mexico.
Don't be ridiculous. I have to study.
All right, bring your books along. Feed them to the big turtles.
1983 is Breathless, and this is an example of Richard Gere in many ways. He's a very interesting actor. He's kind of a cross between being a sort of European art house actor who does really daring things and a big American movie star.
Breathless is a film that very few people should have considered at that time because it was a remake of an absolutely classic French movie by Jean-Luc Godard. To actually even contemplate an American remake was sort of considered folly. Somehow or other, director Jim McBride and Richard Gere in the leading role managed to pull it off. It is an outrageously good film, and it is an outrageous film. Gere plays this sort of car thief. He's a ridiculous human being. He's completely vulgar. He wears one of the most outrageously vulgar sports jackets in any film I think I've ever seen. It's sexual swagger. And if anybody can swagger sexually, it's Richard Gere.
In 1984, Richard Gere was cast by Francis Ford Coppola in his ambitious project, The Cotton Club.
Dixie Dwyer.
Yeah, that's right.
The Dutchman wants to put you to work. He says you play the piano in addition to that bugle, is that right?
Yeah, I do. I play a little piano.
Wants you to play at a little party he's arranged.
Party? How much?
Gere plays a trumpeter called Dixie who turns up at a club which has got some mob connections, and he kind of knows it's got mob connections. He can see this is a great way of advancing his career. And he follows the arc that, actually the Godfather Frank Sinatra arc of being effectively helped into success in Hollywood by the mob. So, great, but he chooses to fall in love with the girlfriend of one of the most dangerous people on the scene. So he's got this very complicated set of choices ahead of him. Does he pursue does he stay alive? Does he pursue his career? Does he stay in love? Richard Gere, being incredibly musical, all of the trumpet work he played himself. I mean, that's an astonishing. When you look at the film, you really would think it was overdubbed, because he's not, you know, tooting away in an awkward and embarrassing fashion. He sounds like he's a jazz trumpet player, and it's a marvelous piece. His acting is as strong as his trumpet playing in this. I mean, he's brilliant at these amoral characters who you love. So this guy's on the make, you know, he's up to no good, but you really root for him. He's very good at taking people who you really shouldn't like and making you just absolutely want their victory.
After the Cotton Club, Richard Gere took on the challenge of playing King David in the 1985 historical drama. The rest of the 1980s saw Gere perform in a series of crime-related films. He portrayed a cop out for vengeance in No Mercy and a bank robber in Miles from Home. He would also delve into the world of political corruption with 1986's Power. But the greatest critical success of this run would be Internal Affairs.
Hey, Raymond Avila. Dennis Peck, my partner.
Hillerman case.
Right, at the Academy.
Very impressive.
I got lucky. Internal Affairs, which came out in 1990, almost reintroduced us to Richard Gere. He'd backed off from celebrity, you know, he'd avoided big roles. And when Internal Affairs came along, it really was, oh yes, Richard Gere. We'd forgotten. It's actually one of his best films. Directed by Mike Figgis. It was a chance to show Richard Gere as the villain, and not just, you know, a standard villain role. He's kind of the lead character. He's a corrupt cop, and really it's about Andy Garcia as the internal affairs investigator working his way towards catching him. And, you know, Gere, who's almost reptilian in how he plays the part, you know, a man who seduces women, who manipulates the world around him. You know, he's an extraordinary character, and Gere just finds this coldness in him that's, you know, just magnetic.
How much do you want?
All right, I'll tell you what's going to happen here. You're going to go home and you're going to think about this. I've thought about it. Shut up. And you're going to call me in a couple days. Nice to meet you, Stephen. Can I trust you? Of course, you can trust me. I'm a cop.
In 1990, Richard Gere starred in the smash hit Pretty Woman.
No taxis?
No, I like the bus.
No, I was thinking, did you really say $100 an hour?
Yeah.
Yeah.
One of the biggest successes of Richard Gere's career was Pretty Woman, in which he appears as the would-be client of a prostitute played by Julia Roberts. And it's really a game between the two.
While we will always look upon Pretty Woman as, you know, the moment of Julia Roberts, I think it's key to look at what good casting Richard Gere was in that film. Gary Marshall, the director,
knew he needed something to make sense of this rather ludicrous plot in which a wealthy banker, falls in love with, the prostitute, he uses. And it becomes a kind of Cinderella story. And to make this work, you had to feel that there was a soul to be saved in the banker character. So rather than just be Cary Grant or, some kind of wonderful, sweeping romantic lead, I think Gary Marshall cast him because he wanted to remind us of the kind of colder roles that Gere had been playing. He wanted to remind us of American Gigolo. He wanted to remind us of Internal Affairs even, and go, well, who is Richard Gere? And can we trust the kind of man he is? But actually, as the film goes on, there's a lovely sense of him sort of waking up to her. He glances at her in ways that you can see a man falling in love and sort of falling into adoration, really. So it's a nice part in the sense that, it set itself up as girl wins over Richard Gere. Oh my God, could she do any better? But as you watch the film, you're like, he's lucky to have her, isn't he?
Gere then worked with legendary director Akira Kurosawa on Rhapsody in August.
Konnichiwa. 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 Yokoso. Mochimasho. Domo arigato. あなたたちおじさんのことなぜ言わなかったのですか? I wish I'd known. おじさんのこと知ってみんな泣きました。
1991 is Rhapsody in August, about Japanese families trying to adjust in the wake of the war. Richard Gere takes this project because it's Akira Kurosawa. I mean, what do you say? He just said, please, I want to be a part of this. I'll even pay for the film if it comes to that, which it almost did. It's just a very tender picture. He's very tender in it. It's late Kurosawa, so you can feel the elegiac quality of this picture. He's humble, he relegates himself, and remember, this guy's coming off of the biggest movie probably in a decade, and he steps to do this one. That's the quality of him. That's what he did.
After Rhapsody in August, Gere starred opposite Kim Basinger in Final Analysis, and then alongside Jodie Foster in Summersby.
Look at him! Hey, Clement! Hero! I bet you never thought you'd get out of here! Hero, this, sir! Miss Bondi! Miss Bondi, get over!
Whoa there, boy. What's that to you, huh?
Your husband.
Who? What'd you say?
He's coming, man.
Who?
Mr. Somersby.
Summersby is a remake of a French film. It's set during at the end of the American Civil War. And Jodie Foster is running a farm while her husband's off fighting, and a guy turns back up who says he's her husband, and that's Richard Gere. But he's kind of too nice a guy to be her husband. Her husband was a terrible, terrible man, and she starts to not be sure. Even she can't quite tell initially.
And the whole film and the whole arc of the story is predicated on the fact that, is he the imposter? And if he's an imposter, is he a better man than the one who went to war? Gere himself actually manages to keep you guessing all the way through, which is the whole point of it.
1993, Summersby would be a big success at the box office for Gere. But that same year, he also caused controversy at the Academy Awards ceremony, which would have a huge impact on his later career.
I think he's a really, really interesting actor. He's been very courageous, not only in his career choices, but also in his espousal of the Tibetan cause. He's a Buddhist. He's a serious guy about this. So serious that when he was talking at 1993 Oscars, he used this as a platform to condemn China for their treatment of Tibet, and was subsequently banned from the Oscars. Of course, all actors, start wanting to make political statements, and that tend to be a bit of a pain in the butt. But I have to say that this Gere has been consistent about this. He is serious, and I think that we should respect that.
In 1994, Richard Gere starred in yet another remake of a French film when he played opposite Sharon Stone in Intersection. The following year, he would take on the role of Lancelot in First Night.
The round table.
Yeah. This is where the High Council of Camelot meets. No head, no foot. Everyone equal. Even the king.
In serving each other, we become free.
That is the very heart of Camelot.
First Night was a rare outing for Richard Gere in what you might call a straightforward blockbuster. He didn't tend to take those kind of roles. Pretty Woman wasn't designed that way. It just became a huge hit. But here we had the King Arthur's story. It was going to be told with Sean Connery as an aged Arthur and Richard Gere as Lancelot. You can see the kind of the head office at the studio, can't you? Pitching it. We've got Sean Connery and we've got Richard Gere. The old heartthrob, the new heartthrob. And between them would be Guinevere.
I dare not kiss so lovely a lady. I only have one heart to lose.
Gere followed up First Night with a pair of thrillers that were box office successes, Primal Fear and The Jackal. He also made a film that dealt directly with the politics of China in Red Corner, before reuniting with Julia Roberts for 1999's Runaway Bride.
Hello.
Hi.
Hi. Hi. Could I have 2 cups of coffee?
Yes.
And, what is that wonderful smell? The cinnamon rolls. Could I have 2 of those?
Sure.
Also? Thank you.
Okay. Maggie, I think this makes the best you.
Runaway Bride is basically Pretty Woman 2. Gary Marshall, the director, gets Julia Roberts and Richard Gere together. Hector Elizondo appears as well. All the favourites, if you like, the old teams back together. The story is about Julia Roberts as a girl who constantly runs away from weddings, and she runs away at the altar. And Gere is a New York journalist who decides that he's going to do a story on the Runaway Bride. And of course, they end up falling for each other. It's an enjoyable romp. But there's something that makes it feel like it's not quite Pretty Woman. If they hadn't tried so hard to include all the people, to make it feel like they were putting the band back together, it would be a fine romantic comedy in and of itself, but it pales because of the comparison.
Gere continued with romantic dramas in Dr. T and the Women and Autumn in New York. He then turned his attentions towards the dark thriller Unfaithful.
There was this nice guy who helped me.
It was like this, Dad. It was a twister. Whoa. Dad, look. It was like this.
Wow.
He lived around there. He got me some Band-Aids and put me in a taxi.
Is he good looking?
Unfaithful is Adrian Lyne's film about a reasonably happy married woman who sort of accidentally has an affair and the devastating consequences of that affair. The interesting thing about this is that Richard Gere now plays the cuckolded husband, not the lover. It's a role that he brings into all kinds of intelligence. Diane Lane plays his wife, and Olivier Martinez plays the lover, who would be French, of course. It has all kinds of elements going on it, which are sort of film noir. We're looking at a kind of neo-film noir here. And what I like about all their performances, but Gere's especially, is that they are relatively understated. This is one of those films that could easily have become quite hysterical. It never gets to that pitch. And that keeps it on a level of reality that is unusual in this kind of movie.
In the same year as Unfaithful, Gere returned to his musical roots when he appeared in the big screen adaptation of the Broadway hit Chicago.
Ladies and gentlemen, presenting the silver-tongued prince of the courtroom, the one, the only, Billy Flynn!
I don't care about expensive things, cashmere coats, diamond rings, don't mean a thing. All I care about is love. That's what I'm here for.
Chicago's 2002 Rob Marshall, based on the hit Broadway musical, which was based on the great movie The Front Page. He plays Billy Flynn. Now everybody sat there with their mouths open and aghast that Richard Gere could sing and dance beautifully. Well, but that's how he started. And if you actually look back on all of Richard Gere's performances, just about all of them, he's got an incredible physical grace, which is actually adds to his whole persona. So it makes perfect sense. But this guy is a song and dance man, and he was absolutely great.
Give 'em the old razzle-dazzle, razzle-dazzle. Give 'em an act with lots of flashing, and the reaction will be passionate. Give 'em the old hocus-pocus, bead and feather 'em. How can they see with sequins in their eyes?
In 2006, Richard Gere starred in The Hoax.
Excuse me, Kate.
Please. Told me that Howard Hughes is moving into this hotel.
What is this? What's going on? It's an executive decision to close the facility for the weekend, sir. You are being relocated.
Executive decision. He plays the writer Clifford Irving, who wrote a false biography of Howard Hughes. I think it's one of his most substantial parts he ever did. And he has to play it very carefully because he didn't want to be just a villain in the film. And I think his smooth performance really made the film, but not the success that Richard Gere had hoped for. He thought it was one of the best films he'd ever made, and he couldn't understand why it had not been shown more often. He said it was one of his great lost films, which hardly anybody saw, but those who did see it liked it. Well, certainly they agreed with Richard Gere that it was one of his best performances.
The rest of the mid-2000s saw Richard Gere starring in Shall We Dance with Jennifer Lopez and Susan Sarandon, and the drama Bee Season. He also appeared in the unusual biopic of Bob Dylan, I'm Not There.
Here, I'm invisible.
Come on now.
Even to myself.
I'm Not There is a film directed by Todd Haynes, starring as Bob Dylan, Christian Bale, Heath Ledger, Cate Blanchett, Richard Gere. What he does is he breaks down Bob Dylan's life into a series of characters, a series of vignettes, which are interpretations really of his music and of the kind of person he is at that particular point in his life. And Gere plays Billy the Kid. It's at the point that Bob Dylan's getting involved in Sam Peckinpah movies and that he's becoming more of a kind of crazy outlaw character. And he gives it a lift, he gives it fun. I mean, the film itself is quite unusual to watch. It's almost like a 60s movie, but it comes across very nicely.
Richard Gere has stated that he has been essentially exiled by the major Hollywood studios because of his political activism concerning China, which has become one of the most important markets for major studio pictures. As a result, his later career has focused on independent projects, And one of the most critically acclaimed of these films was 2012's Arbitrage.
We're going to put out a press release immediately, today. We're going to say there's no deal. There never was a deal. You're not going to be buying Old Hill. You're not going to be buying Quantum. You're not going to be buying anything. You're just a browser. Me? I'm going to continue to enjoy my earnings, and while I soar on princely wings to my next winning enterprise.
Arbitrage is one of the late great performances by Richard Gere. It's a sort of role that he was built to play, and yet he just still plays it amazingly. He plays a very, very rich, slightly corrupt hedge fund manager. He moves through the higher levels of New York society. He knows everything about how to manipulate money, and yet this is all built on a sort of falsehood. It's all built on the fact that he's done something wrong. He's done something criminal in order to support this extraordinary lifestyle that he has. He gets involved in something that is going to bring him down. This is one of those great characters where he starts off top of the world, master of the universe, and bricks are being pulled away one by one by one by one until you realize that he has absolutely nowhere left to go.
Richard Gere continues to star in the eclectic mix of films that he has always chosen throughout his career, including the second best exotic Marigold Hotel.
I'm here writing a book, as a matter of fact. A novel.
That's a coincidence, because I read novels.
No.
Have you written others?
No. This is my first. It's been kind of a dream until now.
Any other dreams I can help you with?
Richard Gere continues to act, he continues to be a star, he continues to be an example of how you can be an activist and be an actor, be a movie star and still hold on to your values, still give a great performance, still be the person people want to see. He's also an example of how you get older on the screen.
He made protest speeches when he hosted the Oscars, and he followed filmmakers that he loved and allowed them to not pay him. He did all these things that movie stars don't do. Not even actors do. I mean, it's very rare that you find someone who will commit so wholeheartedly to these things. But along the way, he also makes some of the most successful romantic comedies or thrillers of all time. They're just fantastic movies.
He's always been an actor of some substance, a man who is very charismatic. And I think his films prove that he's a pretty major star in the Hollywood firmament.
He's also one of the very few actors who can challenge and interrogate male vanity and male narcissism. And he's done this consistently throughout his career.
He had an enigmatic surface that made him great for film noir. So he was a great tool for people like Paul Schrader, and the remake of Breathless. He did really good stuff and he carried on doing good stuff, but was able to balance it out with this kind of heartthrob image as well, and almost use that heartthrob image to kind of deflect us into darker worlds.